Roll for Crit is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Come roll with us at patreon.com/rollforcrit. Word on the street is there are some new games coming out, and we've got some other goodies to talk with you about too. If you're a board game fan, you don't want to miss it. Check it out in our news roundup. One of this year's most anticipated titles is Descent: Legends of the Dark from Fantasy Flight Games. This is the newest edition of Descent, their dungeon crawling game. This version of it will be fully cooperative and is heavily dependent on an app. Originally, this game was scheduled to be released sometime in Q2 of 2021, but Fantasy Flight has announced on Twitter recently that it is now scheduled for release in August of this year. So that's a delay of a few months. We were not given a specific reason as to what caused this delay, but presumably it just takes a long time to make a game of this scope and size. This is going to retail for $175, which is a big asking price for a pretty big game. Now, normally, for a game to be released in August, I would say, oh, perfect, it's just in time for Gen Con. But we know that this year, Gen Con has been pushed to September, so you're going to have around a full month to try to get your hands on it, hopefully at some retailer, before Gen Con happens. So if you have FOMO, you don't have to worry if you can't attend Gen Con, you'll still be able to get your hands on this game.
When I tend to see games that are much closer to this price point, they're also not going to be the ones that are printed in huge quantities just because they can't fit that many, in the warehouse. So I'm wondering if maybe that's part of the delays to make sure that when this date comes, there will be plenty on stock or not just like 2 per store.
Yeah, usually a game of this size goes through Kickstarter and often exclusively through Kickstarter. It's not too often you see something like this, but if there's any, publisher that hopefully can handle it, it's someone with the size of Fantasy Flight. I know this is kind of a polarizing game right now. Some people don't like the app, but I'm still looking forward to it. They did have a little brief new trailer as well, along with this release date announcement, but it pretty much just looked like a lot of the same assets they've shown in the past. I don't think there was too much exciting news to discuss there.
Just like wedding anniversaries, when board games reach certain milestones, you gotta do something special. And for Carcassonne, they've hit their 20th anniversary, which means a new special anniversary edition. The box, of course, will look fantastic with gold foiling, and it's designed such that it has actually 2 sort of fronts technically. The backside won't have like text on it, so you can display it however you see fit for your shelf. Now, inside the box, it's the core set, which is designed to pretty much go with any of the expansions. That said, they do have some new artwork and some like UV printing on those, and a couple new tiles, mostly to make that river a little bit longer. There is also going to be a sticker sheet in there to attach to the meeples throughout the game of Carcassonne to give it an extra little bit of flair. I'm a little torn on this. I don't know as much about Carcassonne, so that would probably lean me one way or the other. But I feel since this is a 20th anniversary, I don't know when the last expansion came out. I would have liked that they said or made it so it could fit everything. I do not know at this time if it does or cannot, or if that's even makes sense. I know there are a lot, but I don't know how much is in the boxes. Sometimes they make those boxes a little bigger than the components in there, and you can finagle it all together.
I think you might need a truck to fit all of the Carcassonne expansions at this point. This seems like something that's a fun thing for people who are really hardcore collectors of Carcassonne, but it was only, a year or 2 ago that the Carcassonne 2nd edition came out, and they've been steadily working on the expansions that fit along with that new art style. So it doesn't seem like, this is the thing that Carcassonne fans must have. I feel like if you already have a set, you're probably fine, and this is more for, they had to do something. They wanted to acknowledge the 20th anniversary, and maybe if you haven't ever played it before, it'll be a nice little shiny version to put on your shelf.
Well, like I said, besides the obvious nice-looking box, they do add a couple new tiles, supposedly, that sticker sheet, and a couple little tweaks in some rules. But overall, like you said, if you have already your full collection, you're probably safe.
Exit is an ongoing series of escape room style puzzle games in a box that you can play at home. Most of them are one-time use. You're going to be cutting up components, drawing on things perhaps, so they are meant to be one-time experiences for a group, and we now have word of 2 brand new editions. Of course, they're coming out with Exit games all the time, but these 2 in particular are a little bit more special. One of them because it is a sequel to an earlier title in the Exit series, The Abandoned Cabin. Sounds like we're going to be continuing and facing off against the mastermind from that game again. And now there's another one that is based in The Lord of the Rings. It is going to be fully licensed and themed around Lord of the Rings property, and you're going to be helping Frodo escape somehow and saving Middle-earth in the process. That is going to be more on the introductory level of their games, while the sequel game is going to be a more advanced title. I think both of these are interesting for the reasons I said. Obviously, Lord of the Rings is the big one. Unlock got Star Wars, so I guess Exit is competing with Lord of the Rings, maybe? That's their answer to it?
Right, but I'm very curious because the Unlock had, we can talk about our preferences of Unlock versus Exit and what's in them, but correct me, Unlock has 3 scenarios in the Star Wars one.
It's correct. It's a bigger box, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this sounds like just one.
But it's also 3 times the price for that Unlock, so...
Right. So maybe they'll do more, and I would like to see that. Especially, I feel like with Lord of the Rings right now, we're seeing it really start to go all over the place in the board game marketplace.
And the TV show coming out, it's everywhere, yeah.
But I do think, and this is one of those things when you have to deal with people how we stick to canon, because we know the Fantasy Flight ones, they have made characters for that weren't in the books. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't mind if we sort of just are like, you know what? We'll take the world and we'll just expand it off there. We're like, I don't need to see Frodo. I think there's enough cool stuff like some Elvish rings or things like that you could do, but that's just me.
I mean, the other one, I think that I just think that the format of the Exit games is so abstract and kind of weird that I don't think it will matter much like which characters are using. I'm more interested in just the aesthetics of it,
I'm just in general with the Lord of the Rings. But the other one, I am excited because we have done the cabin one, and I remember that ending on a cliffhanger, so to speak. So I'm actually excited that they're picking it up because it's cool that not all of them are connected, so you can pick whichever one you want. But then there's we got maybe 1 or 2 that will connect with another game. And I think that's a good choice. That way, if people want to have one that's a series, you can have one, but you can also just whatever your store has too. So I'm excited for that.
Well, we'll see if we're able to survive and exit the rooms when these new releases come out.
Steamforged made a huge blog post about a bunch of their upcoming releases. Most of it was things that we knew about or coming close. For example, the Horizon Zero Dawn expansions that should be reaching backers relatively soon. But at the end, they had 2 new announcements that are pretty interesting. First off, we have a competitive Sonic game, which seems to be that you are racing against each other playing these cards, but we don't know much beyond that. And the other one is a bit of a tease that we're 90% sure we know what it is. It was a picture with some pirate gold, some skulls, against what looks to be a hull of a ship, with a little riddle which ends with in the sea of ... There's a video game from Rare called Sea of Thieves that is pirate themed. So we're guessing that they have gotten the rights to make a Sea of Thieves board game. Both of these are very interesting. The Sonic we've seen before in a couple other things, but not in a card game format. And it sounds like, I'm very curious because it says, from what little we know, it sounds like you might be, it's not just I attack for 5 damage. It seems it might be more race related, which maybe you're hitting each other, but it could be that you also play on track. So you could be on the Green Hills or in the casino level. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Sea of Thieves. I remember when we actually got this, Jonathan and me were curious, how would that go? Would it just be, are you working on a ship together? And could there be traders? Are you all on your own ship piling around? Because Sea of Thieves is one of those games similar to, I want to say things like the, I can't remember the name of the Viking one that's out now, but
Valheim.
It's Valheim, where you can sort of be competitive or work together. It's really up to the players. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if that will capture it or if we're just look, we've got the theme and the look of Sea of Thieves and we're just putting you on a boat to work together.
It's interesting. Yeah, I really enjoy the time we spent with the Sea of Thieves video game. The pirate theme is always fun in board games, and I think it makes sense here. That really could be anything because that game is so open ended. I could see it being
Hmm.
cooperative, competitive. There could be a campaign in there. It could be more freeform. It could just go anywhere. I mean, they're doing a card game for Sonic, which is also maybe not the first thing I would think of. So clearly, the sky's the limit in that regard. This is just ahead of Steamforged launching their new Monster Hunter board game project on Kickstarter. So
Hmm.
they've got a lot of these video game properties in the works. Clearly, they've made a reputation for themselves, whether you like their games or not. It seems like companies and publishers like to license them out to them. Wizards of the Coast recently released a new book for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition called Candlekeep Mysteries, which contains multiple scenarios, each one written by a different author that players can incorporate into an existing campaign or use as just a one-shot for their role-playing desires. Recently, we heard from one of the authors via Twitter, Graham Barber, who is not so happy with the way his contributions to the book turned out. He had a scenario in there which revolved around the Yuan-Ti attempting to resurrect a serpent god, and his intention, he states, was for there to be a more nuanced take on these people, that they would be not strictly evil, but have some flaws, some good things about them, allow you to kind of decide how you wanted to approach them as players when using this scenario. Unfortunately, he was not consulted, and there were a lot of changes made to this scenario before the book's final release, which he was surprised to discover upon reading it for himself. And he has taken to Twitter to talk about those changes, including the fact that he says they made them seem more primitive, almost in a borderline offensive way. And he has actually asked for his name to be removed from future printings. He's even upset because he went into some interviews talking about the scenario as if it were what he had written, not knowing it would be changed. And now, retroactively, those interviews are misleading as to the material in the book itself. This is a really strange story, and there are other authors of Candlekeep Mysteries who it doesn't sound like had any of these issues or were asked about certain changes. And it's one of those weird things with Wizards of the Coast, which is a pretty big company, where I am just wondering, how was any of this just some kind of a miscommunication? The emails got lost somewhere, or they just for some reason decided we're ignoring this guy, or we don't think he'll approve the changes, so why even talk to him anyway? Either way, it's a bad look.
It's very weird because I mean I love the sound of his idea. It was the I'm blanking on the name, the snake-like race, the two different groups, but they are fighting over a relic that pretty much caught in a village of a different race that are just they're just caught in the middle of the war.
Mm-hmm.
And they sound like this whole he like spent this whole like information trying to like make their culture interesting and not just like they're dudes, which it seems like that's what it turned out to be, you know. And I'm curious because I remember in the description, like, I wonder because usually when you hear waking up the snake god, you see just like they're the bad guys. So the fact he made them not just that, I was like, okay, I like that. And so it's a little disappointing that they watered it down, but it's weird that they sent them in on interviews to talk about this when they were going to change it.
Yeah, a lot of strange things. I don't believe Wizards has made any kind of statement about it just yet. Who knows? Maybe they'll come around and actually change future editions if there's enough push on this. But Candlekeep Mysteries, as it is available now, so you can check it out if you're interested.
The Game Manufacturers Association, or GAMA, awards a retailer each year with awards to sort of help show what retailers did something interesting, unique, or just did an overall great job. This year, for their best retailer, they decided to award it to, well, all the GAMA retailers, because let's be honest, it's been a rough year. And if you're still standing, you did a pretty good job. And it's not over yet, though, so I can understand where they're coming from with this. At first, I'm like, everyone gets an award, but I'm like, well, yeah. I think when was the last time a game store had to go through this where no one's allowed to go into their store? You know?
Yeah, it's a nice thing for them to do. It's a nice gesture. I think it's merited for sure. It's like you said, it's been a hard year for everybody, and does this award mean that much? Not really, but it's just nice. It's something that we can all smile at and feel kind of good about, and not have to stress over in a stressful time. That's all the news we've got for you today. Let us know in the comments if you are looking forward to any of the games we talked about that are coming up in the near future, or if you happen to try out some of the Candlekeep mysteries in question, or maybe you want to shout out one of the retail stores near you that is now a GAMA award winner, perhaps. Let us know in the comments section what you think.
We'd love to hear from you. Until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this is Roll for Crit.
Never miss out by liking and subscribing, and you can also check out more on our Patreon.
We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and Twitch, so follow us there.